Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Given how well my last video did regarding mysteries in Tears of the Kingdom, I've decided to do some more before shifting back into my normal content. It really means a lot to me that so many people watched, commented, and liked my video. It's seriously the first time anything I posted has blown up like this. So thank you. Thank you very much. With that said, sit back and relax. Here are 7 more mysteries in Tears of the Kingdom. Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. If you like what I do, please give this video a like and subscribe. Make sure to click the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. Thanks to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Now, let's begin. Number 1. Why do Bloopies change into bubble frogs? Bloopies might be the cutest things in the game, and yes, even cuter than Koroks. I love the way that they run from you, and always feel bad about shooting them for rupees. At this point, most people know that they run towards caves. What is also well known is that each cave has a bubble frog in it, and that it will drop a bubble gem upon defeat, something that is needed in order to help Colton with his quest to become a Satori. While helping this rather loud and annoying fellow out is nice, the real question is, why are Bloopies turning into bubble frogs to begin with? When we strike a bubble frog down, we see it rise into the air and change into a Bloopy, which then promptly runs away, leaving its gem behind. This is indeed a Bloopy as well, as your radar will react to it, though it won't drop any rupees if you shoot it. Now of course, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdoms take a lot of influence from Miyazaki's work. Films such as Princess Mononoke specifically. Those stories often show the impact of civilization on spirits. And the Bloopies do indeed resemble spirits, now don't they? So could it be that the state of Hyrule over the course of the last few years, and the increase of gloom, or in this case miasma in the air, could be having an effect on these creatures? I personally don't think so. I think that bubble frogs might just be an evolution of the base creature. Back in Breath of the Wild, people speculated that Bloopies would eventually grow into a Satori. Perhaps if we apply some Pokemon logic here, a bubble frog would be a mid-stage evolution. Or perhaps because Bloopies are taking refuge in caves, they just naturally change more in the direction of frogs. As to where hanging out on top of a mountain per se might change one into a majestic horse thing. For now, we simply don't know. And since I don't have a good answer, it remains a mystery in my book. Number 2. Why does the blood moon aid cooking? An interesting quirk in both games is that during the blood moon, specifically in the last half hour of it, all cooking will have a critical success. Now, this might seem like a cute little mechanic with no lore attached to it, but it is unusual enough to mention because the mechanic exists in both games. Plus, we have seen at least one NPC go a little crazy because of the blood moon. I wonder what happened to him in Tears of the Kingdom. More important than that, it's an effect that is consistent, which means that there is some reason, either mechanically or story-wise, behind it. About a year ago, I was working on a theory about how the power of the blood moon is seeping into the food, and was going to make an argument that it was energizing the food and making it better. Well, it turns out with Tears of the Kingdom, there is some supporting evidence for this, more so than I originally thought. Monsters in the depths are covered with gloom, and as a result, they no longer need to sleep, at least according to some Yiga reports. If the power of the gloom and the power of the blood moon are related, then it could very well be that the power is seeping into the food and ensuring a better meal. Of course, as we see with the Gorons, such food may not be healthy to consume for long. But I haven't had any bad side effects from it, so whenever you start to hear that creepy music and see those glowing red flickers kick up in the air, bust out the grill and rustle up some grub. There's no better time to do so. Number 3. Why do ghosts hold preserved weapons? It is stated clearly in-game that the gloom is corroding and damaging weapons. We see this firsthand on the Master Sword at the start of the game. Gloom that is so potent it burns 27 hearts off of Link and ruins his champion tunic. All the same, it's a plot point that the gloom and miasma in the air are actively targeting and destroying weapons. A clever means of keeping Ganondorf's foes weak. When we explore the depths, though, we will come upon these mounds of rocks, with a ghostly image holding a weapon. Unlike the weapons found around Hyrule, these ones are pristine, untarnished, and often worthy of some quality fusing. The Gerudo scimitars are my favorite, but that's beside the point. The question is, with gloom so potent and abundant in the depths, why is it that these weapons are undamaged by it? Could it be that these entities are souls of warriors who, even after death, are safeguarding these weapons to entrust to another? It's a nice sentiment, but considering nobody has been down here for thousands of years, it really makes you wonder who these souls would be. They often resemble the races we are familiar with, and some people think that the Hylian ones resemble the guards from Ocarina of Time. One thing to consider, and this can be chalked up to a mechanic, is that these entities will respawn with their weapons every blood moon. It all asks the question, who they are. And how is it that they are protecting their weapons from the very essence that nearly destroyed the Master Sword? A mystery indeed. Number 4. The engraving on Ganondorf's katana. Most of you are probably aware that if you can overcome the nightmare feel of the Gloom Hands, that a Phantom Ganon will spawn. This is very cool. I love how he is sending a version of himself after you. More important though, is that when you defeat this entity, they will drop what they are wielding, and that includes a katana called the Gloom Sword. Upon looking over this katana, you can notice an inscription above the hilt along with the Gerudo symbol next to it. And so I began to investigate it, revealing either a really deep piece of lore or a really deep blunder. Let me explain. After looking at the shape of the letters, I quickly threw out Gerudo text as it looks quite different, even though Gerudo would have made a lot more sense than what I found. In fact, you guys might remember a video from a couple months ago where I was speculating about his sword. In that video, I used Gerudo letters to write Girahim on it, but I digress. What's important is that I compared this new inscription to Hylian script, and sadly, I failed to find a match. I then took a stab at something because I suspected I knew what it would say, and so I looked up my old notes on Ganondorf's swords from The Wind Waker. When looking at the Hylian text used in that game, specifically the Japanese ones and not the localized ones, I found the match I was looking for. The text on Ganondorf's sword reads Kotake and Kome, which were the names of Ganondorf's mothers from Ocarina of Time. The mystery behind this isn't so much who they are, but if these names are meant to reflect Ganondorf's mothers in this continuity. If so, perhaps Kotake and Kome are even behind him in this cutscene, though I personally think the women here look too young to be those old hags. More important is that if this is the meaning behind the names on the sword, similar to what we see in The Wind Waker, then there is a clear conflict in the timeline. It would imply that this Ganondorf is even more of a mirror of the Ganondorf that we see in Ocarina of Time. If that is the case, it adds support to the idea that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are their own continuity, as this world is very different from the one that we see in the older games. I'm not just talking aesthetics either. There is a clear conflict with aspects of Skyward Sword, given all of the influence from the Zonai. If this bit about Ganondorf's mothers is true, then that would imply this is a retelling of that old story we know from the timeline. And thus, this could confirm that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are what many of us feared, a complete reboot of the franchise. I am especially curious as to your thoughts on this one. Feel free to leave a comment and I will respond to as many as I can. Number 5. Why are the dueling peaks split in the depths? by virtue of the depths being filled with Zonai ruins, such ruins as mining facilities and the construct factory, not to mention the occasional cluster of constructs themselves. It is clear that the depths predate the ancient past that Zelda witnesses. In this cutscene in particular, Memory 4: An Unfamiliar World, Zelda surveys the surface from a location right in front of where the Shrine of Resurrection would be built. We know this spot. This is where we first glimpse the world in Breath of the Wild. In this ancient world, though, for a brief moment, we see this, the Dueling Peaks. Except that it isn't the Dueling Peaks yet. That would happen at a later point in time. Now that I've established that the mountain wasn't cut in two yet, what do we find when we go there in the depths? We find an inverted version of the Dueling Peaks, the one that has been split in half. If the depths predate the ancient past, which they would have to on account of the ancient Zonai building their technological wonders, as well as mining down there, then why is it that this landmark reflects the mountain's future state? Is there a story reason for it? Or did the developers just forget not to check their lore? We've seen that before in Age of Calamity regarding King Dorephan's scar. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Number 6. Why is the Hebra hold in the depths? This is very similar to the last one, but I had to dig a bit harder to confirm it. Hebra Peak has a big hole in it, one that looks like it was made by, say, a Divine Beast cannon. If we look at this memory from Tears of the Kingdom, the Gerudo Assault, we can see this angle of the Great Plateau from about this location. I couldn't pinpoint Ganondorf's exact position, but from the landmarks around him, I know that I'm close. In this scene, we see this mountain in the background for a brief moment. This is Mount Hebra. This memory shows that in the ancient past, it lacked a hole that is so clearly in it in the present. And so, with the same logic I used with the previous point involving the Dueling Peaks, we know that the depths should reflect this mountain without this hole. If we go and check out the location, we see a few things that don't make sense. First is the obvious hole now filled with solid rock, but also these strange rock protrusions that the Yiga have made a camp on. I checked Mount Hebra in the overworld and could find no evidence of holes to form these protrusions, though it's possible they are just filled in with ice. The Yiga base aside, the hole in the mountain should not be here, as the hole in the mountain was made thousands of years after the time that Zelda traveled to. I again ask, did the developers forget their lore when designing this place? I invite you to leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on the matter. Number 7. Why isn't the goddess statue in the past? Perhaps you are picking up on a theme here involving inconsistencies with the memories and the present. In the Forgotten Temple is a large goddess statue. In Breath of the Wild, she stood proud and tall, with much speculation from the community that she was the same one from Skyloft. And thus, there were many theories about the Forgotten Temple being the Temple of Hylia seen in that game, specifically post-ending, after it had descended to the surface, crushing and completely eradicating Demise. That all would have fit perfectly, until Tears of the Kingdom came out and showed a huge flaw in that theory. In Memory 12, the Sage's Vow, we see this room with the secret stones in it. Araru opens an ornate door and invites the tribe leaders in so he could gift them with power, thus implying that this entire structure is actually a Zonai ruin. If we look at the Forgotten Temple, we can see this exact room all those thousands of years later. And the room even includes a spot for Sonia's grave with Sundelions growing there. This room is, without a doubt, the same room seen in the memory. And so, if we turn our attention back to the door that they came in from, and that room specifically, we can see that there is no huge goddess statue there. There is a large part of the community that believed the ancient past of Tears of the Kingdom would take place after Skyward Sword in the timeline. If that is so, then the mother statue should be present someplace in Hyrule. Perhaps they just moved it? If that were the case, one would question the location of the Cliff Bargainer statue, which both seems to be ancient and to correspond with this statue specifically. If the mother statue was moved, would the Bargainer statue have moved as well? Is this yet another case of the developers not paying attention? There is, of course, another possibility, and perhaps a more likely one if you ask me. It would seem that the Forgotten Temple is not the Temple of Hylia from Skyward Sword, as we all thought. Or possibly, that Skyward Sword never happened at all, and that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are their own isolated continuity. Of all the people who brought up the cloud barrier to me in the comments of the last video, despite me already addressing that issue, I also spoke of huge contradictions that suggest Skyward Sword is not part of this continuity. This would be one of them. After all, this statue will give you the White Sword of the Sky, and not the Goddess Sword as the object was called in Breath of the Wild. If it isn't a statue from Skyward Sword, that would mean that they are merely making a superficial reference to that game, a bit like all the other superficial references that exist in Breath of the Wild. And so, as I stated in my last video, other concepts from Skyward Sword cannot be taken for granted, and that includes things like the cloud barrier as well. Well, there you have it guys, 7 more mysteries from Tears of the Kingdom. If this video does really well again, I'll probably make a third one, or maybe I'll make some other similar topics. Let me know what you guys would like. As for my more regular content, I plan to do some character studies on the sages, and I'll be having a different guest on for each one. So make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification button to help stay tuned. This show is made possible by Patreon. I am getting really close to being monetized here on YouTube, and the success of the last episode really helped out a lot, so thank you very much. Seriously, that made my week. If you want to help out even more and are in a position to do so, supporting me directly on Patreon is the best thing you can do. You'll gain access to my Discord where you can talk to me more directly about topics for upcoming videos, as well as your name in every episode. I love talking about this stuff, and with the new game there's just so much to talk about, so come join me some night and we can chat till dawn. That's it for this episode. See you next time, and may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.